It's that time for my students at Drew. They're sending in their dissertations, and all of the faculty along with me are just hoping that first copy is going to be it. It's going to be great. You know, I had this one student. Doggone it. I read her dissertation, and she said in there that Paul persecuted Christians. Can you believe that? I couldn't let that pass. Well, you knew Paul didn't persecute Christians, right? See, it's an assumption. It's an assumption that's made across the church. But my feeling is, as a scholar, and calling my students to a level of responsible scholarship, is we don't continue with assumptions that are wrong. Paul was persecuting people prior to his conversion. Christians don't come on the scene until years after Paul's conversion. He's in Antioch. That's where they first start calling people Christians. He was chasing around a bunch of people that called themselves the Ebion. Those were the people that gathered around Jesus and his brothers, starting that movement. So I had to send the paper back. I had to write on there, and she even cited somebody that said, even if there's a scholar saying this, doesn't mean we have to perpetrate bad scholarship. Was I being tough? Well, yeah. She needed to know better than that, and she fixed it. I got to thinking about that because what do we do when we're handed a gospel that makes a mistake? I saw somebody flinch. Here he goes again. Yeah, Luke, I can't write on Luke and say, well, what about this and what about that, and send it back to him because he's not around anymore. But look up here, we got purification. And if you look on your bulletin, it says the presentation of the Lord. And then another name for this Mass is Candle Mass. Which is it? Luke blows it. Because what he's doing, he's taking two practices. One is the presentation of the firstborn. And Nick, I'm going to get you into trouble too. I'm not doing this alone. Amongst us Bible scholars that gather for lectionary lunch on Thursday, Nick brings to our attention that part of the law of Torah, the presentation of the firstborn, well, that really didn't make it into practice. Purification, that does. Purification is where a woman who's had a child has to go, and my guess is they probably go to the synagogue and do this as well, not just the temple. They have to go and present themselves and go through a rite or a ritual and be cleansed. And of course, 40 days for a male, but if you have a girl baby, you got to wait another 20 days segregated in uncleanliness before you can be purified. We won't get into that. So what do we do? What do we do with this gospel? If we were in the modern world where this gospel is absolutely true, well, it's not, is it? Run this through a shredder. He'd like to, believe me. Give me that. Let's just mention it. Yeah, we run it through a shredder because it's not true. We don't live in the modern world anymore. That went away after World War II. We live in the postmodern world. And in the postmodern world, I could say to you, what is truth? What is truth? What is truth? What's true? What's true? What's truth? In the modern world, every one of us would have said, Jesus is the one true Lord. In the postmodern world, here's an opinion, 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 here's an opinion. It's thought out. And truth, instead of being federal, is local. It resides with each of us. That makes my job hard. It makes your job hard. Hence, a lot of the empty chairs. And this is a problem that the church is really, really grappling with now. How do we make that transition from a doctrinal modern orientation? We hold these truths being not the Declaration of Independence, that's more of a postmodern document. These truths being the Catholic faith is this, one God, a very God, a very God, a very God, la la la. How do we move from a doctrinal certainty to a postmodern orientation that has to do with your and mine individual spiritual formation? It's not easy. How do we come to grips with gospels like this and what they have to say about us being formed into that person God called and created to be? It's a lot easier to say Jesus is the one, then we can go to coffee hour and have carbohydrates and coffee. Well, the answer was in the collect that we had at the Right One service this morning. We won't have this collect at this service. We're using a different selection of collects. Almighty and ever-living God, we humbly beseech thee that as thy only begotten Son was this day presented in the temple, so we may be presented unto thee with pure and clean hearts by the same thy Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. I read this gospel and it immediately struck me that there is a very important spiritual message there. That's for me. I don't know if it would be for you. The postmodern age calls us into a relationship based on intimacy. Can I share that with you? You know, what will you think if I share it? Will you think I'm weird? That kind of stuff. But I'm going to tell you what this gospel meant to me. That collect, turn it around. It's not so that we may be presented in some otherworldly temple by a Jesus that's come back and is wrapping up time. The question for me is, there's a very sacred temple within me. Very sacred temple within you. And that's the place where God touches us. In every moment, every breath, Christ is being presented at that temple. Are the doors barred and locked? Yeah, sometimes in my life they have been. Is Jesus standing out there with the key and he's got the door? No, it's not locked on the outside. I've barred that door from within. I've got work to do if I'm going to become the person that God called me and created me to be. First thing I got to do is knock the bar off the door. Let Christ in. Let that uncreated light fill me so I can see what work needs to be done to become the child that God created. Yeah, that's the way I look at it. You might see something different. My truth is something I offer to you to consider. And I'd very much welcome you offering your truth so we can grow together. That's what it means to be community. That's what the Christian faith, for me in the postmodern context, is all about. I hope, beyond hope, that our Christian communities, like the Anglican Communion, can make this transition. Because if we don't, these chairs will be even more empty than they are now. But I am so happy that there are so many people sitting in them right now.